Russia has a piece of territory on the Baltic Sea. It is nowhere near Russia. It is between Poland and Lithuania, behind foreign borders. And yet, this small region is Russian. It is called Kaliningrad. On a modern map, it looks like a mistake, a detached red island wedged inside Europe. So why is it there? Did Russia conquer it by accident? Did someone forget to redraw a border? Or did this strange little enclave survive because history refused to clean up? The answer begins with a land that was not Russian, not German either. Long before Kaliningrad, this coast belonged to the old Prussians. They were Baltic peoples, related more closely to Lithuanians than Germans. They lived among forests, rivers, amber beaches, and fortified villages. Their land sat beside the Baltic Sea. That location made it valuable. Merchants wanted its amber, kings wanted its ports, crusaders wanted its people converted, and nearby powers wanted all of it.
In the 13th century, German crusading knights arrived from the west. They were called the Teutonic Order. Officially, they came to spread Christianity. In practice, they came with castles, armies, settlers, and a very clear property policy. The old Prussians resisted. For generations, they fought back. But the Teutonic Knights had reinforcements from across Europe. They built fortress after fortress. Then they connected those fortresses with new towns. One of those towns became Königsberg. Its name meant King's Mountain. It was founded beside the Pregel River. The place was useful immediately. It had a river port, access to the Baltic, and defensive land nearby. Königsberg became a German-speaking city inside conquered Prussian territory. That was the first big map transformation. Baltic tribal land became a crusader state. But the Teutonic Order eventually overreached. It fought Poland and Lithuania. It lost major battles. Its territory shrank. Its reputation collapsed.
And the mighty knightly state became something much less impressive. A former crusading powerhouse had become a nervous borderland. Then came another twist. The lands around Königsberg became the Duchy of Prussia. Later, they became the Kingdom of Prussia. This is where history gets confusing. The kingdom called Prussia was German-speaking, but it borrowed the name of the people it conquered. It was a branding decision with centuries of consequences. Prussia grew into one of Europe's most disciplined military states. It helped unite Germany. Its armies became feared across the continent. And Königsberg became an important eastern city of this new German world. For a long time, its location made perfect sense. It was connected to the rest of Prussia by land. It was part of East Prussia. Germany stretched around it. Nothing looked strange. Then Europe started breaking. The First World War destroyed empires. The German Empire lost. Poland returned to the map. Lithuania became independent. And suddenly, East Prussia was separated from the main body of Germany. A strip of Polish territory reached the Baltic Sea. Germany called it the Polish Corridor. Poland needed it for access to the sea. Germany saw it as a humiliation. East Prussia now became an exclave. That means territory separated from its own country. Sound familiar? Kaliningrad did not invent this problem. It inherited it. Königsberg remained German, but it was cut off from Germany by Poland. A train trip required crossing foreign territory. A map that once looked tidy now looked irritated. And irritated maps can become dangerous. German politicians used the corridor as evidence of unfair peace terms. Nationalists used it to demand revenge. Then Adolf Hitler came to power. He promised to overturn the post-war map. He did far more than that. In 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The Second World War began in Europe. Germany occupied enormous parts of the continent.
For a few years, the map looked brutally simple. Germany had connected East Prussia to the rest of its empire, but that connection came through conquest, and conquest is a terrible kind of glue. As the war continued, Nazi Germany turned east. It invaded the Soviet Union. The fighting became catastrophic. Cities were destroyed. Millions of soldiers and civilians died. The war on the Eastern Front was not just a border dispute. It was a struggle of annihilation. By the final stages of the war, Soviet forces pushed westward. They crossed into East Prussia. Königsberg was heavily defended. It was also heavily bombed. Its old city, famous buildings, and historic center suffered enormous destruction. In 1945, German forces surrendered. Nazi Germany collapsed, and Europe's map was rebuilt again. This time, the winners made the decisions. At the Potsdam Conference, the Allies discussed Germany's future. The Soviet Union wanted northern East Prussia. It wanted the port.
It wanted the coastline. And it wanted strategic depth against future threats from the West. The northern part of East Prussia went to the Soviet Union. The southern part went to Poland. Königsberg was renamed Kaliningrad. The name honored Mikhail Kalinin, a Soviet political figure. The city's previous German identity was removed. German residents fled, died during the war, or were expelled afterward. New residents arrived from across the Soviet Union. Russians, Belarusians, Ukrainians, and others built new lives there. The population changed. The language changed. The names changed. The city changed. But the location did not. Kaliningrad was now Soviet territory. At first, that did not look especially strange. Lithuania was part of the Soviet Union. Belarus was part of the Soviet Union. Much of Eastern Europe was controlled by Moscow. Kaliningrad was separated from Soviet Russia, but it was not surrounded by foreign countries. It was connected through Soviet-controlled territory.
On the Soviet map, it was awkward, but manageable. Then the Soviet Union collapsed, and this is where the old puzzle returned. In the early 1990s, Lithuania became independent. Belarus became independent, Ukraine became independent. The Soviet map shattered into separate states. Kaliningrad remained part of Russia, but now it was cut off again. Not by one foreign corridor, by two independent countries. To reach Kaliningrad from mainland Russia, you crossed other borders. Russia suddenly had an exclave on the Baltic. It was like discovering an old spare room after the house had been demolished. The room was still there, it just no longer connected to anything. So why did Russia keep it? Because states rarely give away strategically valuable territory. Kaliningrad has a Baltic port. Its coast can support naval activity. It sits close to major European capitals. It also contains military infrastructure. For Russia, it is not a forgotten appendix. It is a forward position. For neighboring countries, that creates understandable concern. Poland and Lithuania are members of NATO. Kaliningrad lies between them. This creates what strategists call the Suwałki gap. That is the narrow land corridor between Poland and Lithuania. It links the Baltic states to the rest of NATO. Kaliningrad lies to one side, Belarus lies to the other. On a map, it looks narrow. In a crisis, narrow places become very important. But Kaliningrad is more than a military story. It is also a human one. People live there. They work in ports, factories, schools, shops, and apartment blocks. They cross borders, they trade with neighbors, they travel through a region shaped by shifting rules. For residents, the map is not abstract. It affects trains, roads, visas, prices, and family connections. And the region has another strange layer. Kaliningrad was once Königsberg. Königsberg was the home of the philosopher Immanuel Kant. He spent nearly his whole life there. Today, his grave remains in Kaliningrad. That is one of history's quieter ironies. A German philosopher rests in a Russian city. The city stands on former Prussian land. The land once belonged to Baltic peoples. And all of it sits between Poland and Lithuania. One square of map, several buried worlds. Could Kaliningrad ever have become independent? In theory, maps can always change. In reality, independence would require enormous political agreement. Russia would have to accept it. Local residents would need to support it. Neighboring states would need to manage its consequences. Europe would need to trust the process. That is a very tall stack of ifs. Could Germany claim it back? No serious modern arrangement points that way. Germany formally accepted its post-war borders.
The people who lived there before 1945 are gone or scattered. The place has been Russian for generations. History explains claims. It does not automatically create solutions. That matters.
Because Kaliningrad often invites simplistic answers. It should go back. It was stolen. It makes no sense. But borders are not museum labels. They are lived realities. They reflect wars, treaties, migrations, losses, and power. Sometimes they also reflect terrible injustice. And sometimes they simply outlast the people who drew them. Kaliningrad exists because several different map problems stacked on top of each other. First, medieval conquest replaced a Baltic population with a German state. Then, Prussia became Germany's eastern military powerhouse. Then, the First World War split East Prussia from Germany. Then, Nazi Germany tried to solve that problem through conquest. Then, the Soviet victory erased East Prussia itself. Then, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the Russian peace remained. That is the whole paradox. Kaliningrad is not one map mistake. It is a pile of old maps. A Crusader map, a Prussian map, a German map, a Soviet map, and a modern Russian map.
Each one solved one problem. Each one created another. So why does Russia have Kaliningrad? Because the Soviet Union captured northern East Prussia after the Second World War. Because it wanted the port, the coast, and strategic security. Because Königsberg was transformed into a Soviet city. And because when the Soviet Union vanished, Kaliningrad did not. The border stayed. The country around it changed. That is why Kaliningrad looks impossible today. It was built for a world that no longer exists. But history has a habit of leaving its furniture behind. And sometimes that furniture is a heavily strategic Russian region on the Baltic Sea.